Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan and this is the podcast in which we talk to remarkable people about the big ideas in their lives and the events that have helped shape them. And my guest today is a man who has most definitely changed the world in all sorts of ways. If you've ever danced, if you've ever tapped your feet, it's probably thanks to Nile Rodgers. We are doing this interview actually in Abbey Road Studios, where you are the chief creative advisor. Could you tell us something about what this place means to you, bearing in mind the first guitar tune you ever learned?
Yeah, it's magical. We have carte blanche. We can do anything we could think of. That's pretty cool. But historically speaking, it means a lot. Of course, all the great recordings that have been made here. But it's also, when you think about it, and I was thinking about this last night, there are probably only a handful of studios in the world, and maybe this might be the only one where you can just say to a taxi driver, Abbey Road, and they know where you're going. As a matter of fact, a gentleman was picking me up yesterday, and I wasn't going to Abbey Road, and he says, God, I thought you were going to say Abbey Road.
But this is also the place where A Day in the Life was recorded, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
For the Beatles.
Oh, yeah. And that's the first song I ever learned on the guitar.
Why was that the first song you learned? What was it about that song that you wanted to play?
Well, I love the song. I love the Beatles. And now this may be the truth or it may not be. But I bought a Beatles songbook, and maybe because it started with the letter A, maybe that was the first song in the book.
We're here because your big event in London coming up is the Meltdown Festival.
Yes.
Which you're curating.
Yes.
What's that been like, putting together acts for that?
I would say madness, because my brain just went everywhere. I kept thinking of what could I possibly do in a situation like that and have that amount of days, that amount of venues, a large palette to choose from, and then I had to start to scale back because my head was crazy. I just started thinking of every possible cool thing. And then I realized I was thinking too much about myself. And that was the difficult thing, to stop thinking about myself and to start thinking about the people who were going to come out and see the show. And that was really tricky because I wanted to put together stuff that I personally wanted to see. And then I thought to myself, well, what were the things in my life that sort of had the greatest impact on me? And I can honestly say the things that had the greatest impact was the music that I didn't expect to turn me around. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I would go into a place expecting one thing and the next thing you know, I'd leave and go, oh my God, that was amazing.
You've also got Johnny Marr playing, who's been on this podcast talking about you, actually, and what a big influence you are in his guitar playing.
Johnny.
Is that like, one for you? Or
Johnny's like my brother. I mean, he even hit me last night and said, Nile, I can't wait. I'm going to go, of course we can't wait. Because Johnny and I are extremely close, not only as human beings, but also the music that we like. I mean, the stuff that we always talk about wanting to do, nobody would believe that Johnny Marr, coming from the Smiths and his background, would want to do that kind of music.
What were your influences then as a young boy?
Oh, see, that's crazy because I started out playing classical music and I got into, man, it's crazy. I played classical music, but in my house, all they played was bebop or modern jazz. So that was the music that I sort of loved. Classical music is what I played because that's what they taught in school, but I liked playing it as well. But the people I'd go out to see would be Thelonious Monk or Nina Simone or people like that, or Mingus. When I moved to California for a short period of time, I listened to a lot of R&B because that's the neighborhood I lived in, and those were the guys I was hanging out with. And then one day, I met this guy named Dr. Timothy Leary. I never knew who he was. I never knew what LSD was. I didn't have any clue. Honestly, no clue at all. And we took LSD and we went up to a house in the Hollywood Hills. And it was the day that the Doors' first album came out. And we listened for 2 days to "This Is the End, Doo-doo-doo, Beautiful Friend. This is the end, my own." It was like, it was something out of a movie. And my grandmother thought that I had been kidnapped or ran away or anything like that, but I was just on LSD and I didn't know what LSD was. And I came home the next day or 2 days later, tattered and dirty and stuff like that. And the police were at the house and she looked at me and said, "What happened to you?" And I had turned into a total hippie. Completely. I had a completely different vernacular, a whole way of speaking, like, "Oh, wow, man, hey, man, Granny, like, you're blowing my mind." And this all happened in 2 days. And from that point on, I was into psychedelic music. I then picked up the guitar because this really pretty girl said that she needed a guitar player, and I had never touched a guitar in my life. And I picked up the guitar and made a fool out of myself. And believe it or not, within 2 years, I was playing on Sesame Street.
Partly because you're very generous with your interviews. I think we feel we know quite a lot about your life. And you've spoken very unusually about your parents being heroin addicts, mm-hmm. in a way that's kind of strangely positive. That you don't talk about your childhood being damaged by that. You talk about them as amazing people.
Oh, they were awesome.
So can you tell me a little bit about what that was like?
So I didn't really know any other life. That they were, it almost makes me feel a little odd to talk about them as heroin addicts, because yes, they were, and that was their daily routine. They had to pursue it and do it, and the ritual and all that sort of thing. But my parents are super intellectuals. They loved everything. They loved music and poetry and art, and so I had a very artistic upbringing, very broad-minded, liberal upbringing. My stepfather, who's Jewish, is a mathematical genius, and he taught me a lot of interesting things that probably have helped me a great deal in my life. I remember the first time I met Ron Howard, the director. We were on a train, and because my stepfather is a mathematical genius, he also can do these great magic tricks. And I saw Ron Howard, and I wanted a favor from him, and I did a magic trick that blew him away. He was like, "Wow, how'd you do that?" I said, "Great, well, can I get Jim Carrey to do my music video?"
Did you get any sort of social, if they were intellectuals, is that where sort of social activism came from as well?
Well, my parents weren't activists in the traditional sense. I think that just happened because of where we lived in Greenwich Village, because of the kids that I hung around with, and because of the times in the Vietnam War. I was of an age where I had to register for the draft, and if my number came up, I would have to serve in a war I certainly didn't believe in. I would have been a pacifist or a conscientious objector. There's no way I would have gone to Vietnam. the cool thing is that I was born on September 19th, and in the year of the lottery system, my number came up like 265 or something crazy. So I didn't have to worry about it. But the thing that was funny is I was born in 1952, which is a leap year. And I remember the guy whose birthday was February 29th thought that his number would be some crazy number because February 29th only comes up once every 4 years. And that year of the draft, February 29th was like 3. So I don't know if he served, but it was pretty funny.
Because you ended up joining the Black Panthers, didn't you?
Yes.
Was that because of the war, or was that because of race? Or
No. It was just development. So let's go back in time in America. I grew up in an America where people were taught to be kind to each other, where people were taught to, and it's going to sound corny, it shows you how old I am, but people were taught to escort little old ladies across the street. So we grew up thinking like that. As kids, we always helped people out. So I became a Cub Scout, then I became a Boy Scout, and I joined the Boys Club of America. Then the war broke out, and I joined, a group, what was it? Not the Peace and Freedom Party, but it was the Peace something or other. It was, God, I can't remember the name of it. But it was, anyway, Peace, the name of it started with Peace, and then you just sort of, as you got smarter, you got a little bit more radical. And then, SDS came along, the Yippies, the Black Panthers. So it was just that sort of thing. It was just a progression. It was almost as if you start out playing very simple 3-chord rock, and then, you start playing fusion music.
How did you want to change the world back then?
We were very idealistic. So having interracial parents and growing up in Greenwich Village and being around really hip people, you would have massive dreams. You believe that there was nothing you couldn't do. America was a very unionized kind of country. So we grew up with those type of artists. We grew up with the Bob Dylans, and we grew up with the Woody Seegers and the people like that. And, the concept of solidarity was a really important thing. And we believe, we had big demonstrations. We had, lots of protests. And it's interesting now that America, you almost never see that. I go to another country. I made a joke a few years ago that I first met Daft Punk about 20 years ago. And every time I would try and get together with them, every time I go to France, there was always some kind of strike and we could never get together. They came to America, no problem. There was no strike. It was like, call me up, hey, Nile, come to Electric Lady. And it was no problem. We got together and did Random Access Memories. But other countries we travel to, you see people protesting, you see people concerned with the way that the government is handling social situations. And that's how America used to be. And I don't know why it changed so drastically and how the unions and things like that were dismantled. But they did it effectively. And America now doesn't seem like the America I grew up in.
Do you see any parallels, though, with the America today that is divided, difficult, a lot of social division, racial division? Do you think it will inspire people the same way the America you were growing up in inspired your generation to produce disco?
I sure hope so. I'm really terrible with predicting the future because I would have never thought that by the year 2000, America would be the America that it was. I was so optimistic that I thought we'd just come together as a country. I thought people would be much more understanding, kind, and loving. And when September 11th happened, I had 3 friends, 3 associates that were crashed into the first tower. One woman that I'd known since I was a young Black Panther. I couldn't believe that they all 3 were on the same plane. I thought that was going to be some kind of defining moment where America would change and be loving, because for about 2 months, that was too long. Certainly about 2 weeks, New York was the kindest, most magical place. You never heard anyone raise their voice in anger.
And instead it led to wars and division.
Yeah, it was incredible. America, in a strange way, most people don't have passports. They haven't been many places. America's a big country, and we have a lot of stuff to do. So you live your whole life and not leave America and have a very full, interesting life. And people didn't know the difference between, different forms of Islam and different forms of religions or anything like that. And just anybody that looked like the people that we had coined this term in America, the terrorist, anybody that looked like the terrorist were picked on. And it got really bad. And that's when when I founded my organization, my charity, the We Are Family Foundation. And basically what we stood for was we were an anti-bias organization. And then we realized that it probably is better to show by example. Instead of trying to preach and tell people what to do, we just started bringing people together. We started bringing children from all over the world. And we've seen that the multiplier effect that's had has been absolutely extraordinary.
What do you think the role of music is in all this? I mean, is your music about bringing people together, or? Our
music has always been about bringing people together. As a matter of fact, when we started Chic, Bernard Edwards, my former partner, who was not very political or socially activist or social activism or anything like that at all. Like when we met, he had already been married and had at least 1 kid and quite a few more on the way. We sat down because we liked each other so much and we respected each other so much. I said, I'm not going to superimpose my ideals and my philosophy on you. And I don't want you to superimpose your down south being subordinate to white people stuff on me, because Bernard told me that the town that he was born in, if he were walking down the street and a white person was walking towards him, he was obliged to walk out in the street and let that person pass. I said, my stepfather's white. What am I to do? Like have my stepfather walk on this sidewalk and I'm out in the street? I'm like, what are you talking about? I never heard of anything so ridiculous. And, we laughed a lot, and I just said, so our music is not going to be political. It's all going to be about people coming together and having a good time. We wanted people to recognize that the disco movement was the most open movement that I had ever seen. And I've even quoted myself saying that I believe that the disco movement seemed more revolutionary than the Panthers, because the whole concept is to bring disparate people together. And the first time I walked into a disco, I was a jazz snob. I only lived for bebop and jazz and standards. So we went into this disco, and the first record I heard was Donna Summer, Love to Love You, Baby. And if you listen to that record, you'll see it's a pretty incredible composition. It's not just Donna Summer being sort of sexual and, oh, I love to love you. The music is incredible. It's great, great, great record. And the people in the club were all different types of people. There were gay people, there were straight people, there were Latinos, a lot of Italian people, a lot of black people, Puerto Ricans. I was like, man, I've never been to a club like this. And they were doing this dance called the hustle. And of course, my girlfriend and I, we didn't know anything about dancing, the hustle or dancing. We just, we sat around the club and went, yeah, man, straight no chaser, whatever. We were like cool. And then we got up and we started imitating the people who were dancing, and then different people started dancing with us to show us the moves. And I was like, oh man, how cool is this? Anyway, by the time we left that club, I said to myself, I want to belong with those people. Those are the coolest people I've ever met in my life. They were open-minded, they were loving, they didn't laugh at us because we couldn't dance. They showed us how to do it. I was like, man, disco, this is it. When I was introduced to disco music, I thought that this was the most effective music. Why? Because it spoke to the largest audience.
And do you think that's still the case? Or did disco evolve, did it evolve? Did evolution carry on to hip hop, electro pop, whatever it is?
Well, so what happened was, whenever there's money to be made, and the powers that be see that you can compartmentalize it and control it, that's a lot easier than having it sort of random and all over the place. When hip hop evolved out of disco, it became its own thing. It's like, we got to stand for hip hop. And that's why I never really did much work in hip hop, even though I loved hip hop. I always felt like now I have to identify with a specific community, and that was not where I was coming from. That made me feel really weird. It made me feel like, wait a minute, everybody was open and everything was everything, and then all of a sudden it was like, yo, I gotta be this, and yo, I gotta be that, and I gotta be this type of person and that type of person. And if you're not from the streets and you're not from there, then you're perpetrating. And it's like, wait a minute, it started to feel weird to me. Then the great thing that sort of happened was the EDM movement. That felt a little bit more like the disco movement. That felt a little bit more inclusive. That felt like anybody could come and hang, and anybody could be a DJ. And if you had the right crowd, you could be anyone from David Guetta on this side to Felix the House Cat on that side to Louisa over there or Nervo over here. You could be it became this wide clique, and almost everybody was down, because even if a DJ specialized in a certain type of music, all of a sudden they could play something that has nothing to do with what they're typically known for, and the crowd goes bananas.
Well, I mean, your guitar, you can hear your guitar on everything from Chic and Sister Sledge to David Bowie to Daft Punk. So what is it, technically, do you think, or instinctively, about the way you play that guitar that makes people move?
It's something that I am conscious of. I treat the guitar, the left hand of my guitar, I treat like the right hand of the piano. Like, if you just listen to the intro of I'm Coming Out, I don't even know what it is. I I have to listen to it and I'd have to write it down to play it. I know what I composed, but because I'm always trying to interpret the music, I never want it to get boring to me. I play it differently every time. Last night we did a show and we played Get Lucky, and I heard the record for a minute and I went, oh my God, that's what I play on the record? I totally forgot. I like music to evolve and change, even though I still stick to the composition, if that means. So it's like jazz. So jazz, you have the composition written out, but you interpret it differently every time. Every single time I play Le Freak, it's different. I have no idea what I'm going to play.
If you go on YouTube, there are all these videos about how to play, like Nile Rodgers.
And none of them
are right.
which is funny to me. It's like, can a person hear? Like, when I learn a record and I'm listening to a song, when we were a cover band, we would listen to a song and we play exactly those parts.
Could you explain, though, technically, your sort of less is more philosophy on playing the guitar?
So the thing that I had heard one day when Miles was ranting, one night I went to a club and he kept saying to somebody that, man, it ain't the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play that count. And when you're a kid, sometimes you take things a little too literally. And when I heard Miles say that, because Miles was like God to me, I thought, what happens when you set up a groove, right? You give a person a groove, you give them the information, and then now you're playing sort of like that. So they still think they hear the original motif, but they don't hear it. It's like you can now stop doing that and do other things. And many Chic records are multiple guitars, so I have to do hybrid parts when I do it live to make the person feel like it's the song. When I hear other people try and play Le Freak, it cracks me up because I go, wow, that's what you hear, listen to the record. That is not what I'm playing at all.
I mean, are you conscious of having changed the world when it comes to music?
No, not conscious of having
clearly
changed
have,
the
haven't
world.
you? I mean,
I don't, it's weird to think of it like that. The best example, and I know from record sales, I know from awards, I know from all that stuff, I know from things people have said to me, I know from things that Nelson Mandela has said. No, I've heard it. I've heard people say it to me, but I don't internalize it so much, except for with one song. And I say, the one song that I know I can go anywhere on the planet and go, 1, 2, aw, they're gonna go freak out. Is that song, which sort of as a composer is fun. I mean, it's like going, you know what's gonna follow. When I say 1, 2, I know freak out's gonna follow. And that's cool. That's a great feeling.
And I mean, you mentioned the charity, which is obviously an ongoing thing. I mean, in terms of social activism and we're in London right now, and you went to the scene of the Grenfell fire, didn't you?
Yes.
Why was it that important for you to be there?
So I didn't know what it was all about because I was on a plane coming to London, and when I landed, my manager said, I think you should go here and show solidarity. And I didn't know what had happened at the time. Because in today's world, we're doing all sorts of stuff. At that time, I believe I was doing an arrangement for someone. So I wasn't listening to the news. And when I got there, I had already been edified at that point. So by the time I got there, I expected it to be chaotic like it was in New York for a while during September 11th. And I was so shocked that when I got there, I was met by this young girl, and she was so together. I thought, like, man, this was amazing. She didn't come and say, hey, Nile, can you come and sing some songs and try and cheer people up? She gave me 2 boxes and said, hey, Nile, can you go over there and sort these clothing, this clothing by size and weight and so and so. And I said, this is so organized and together. And I was actually really, really proud. So much of the time, we're reactive when things like that happen. And, you know, we're knocking heads trying to do the right thing because our hearts tell us to do something and we just want to do something right. But without having reconnaissance on the ground, you don't really know what you're doing. So your heart is in the right place, but you're not working efficiently. When I got there, they were so efficient. They had things lettered. You knew what box something was going to go in. And this felt very much like the Black Panthers because we were like that. We were very organized.
I mean, you've spoken in the past about deeper hidden meaning in your music. How important is it, do you think, to find deeper hidden meaning in everything you do?
I don't know any other way to write because I start out with a motif or an idea. It's the beginning of a series of ideas that are going to sort of cascade into this flow of stuff. And I'm going to start thinking about this song and that song. And all of a sudden it's going to be this new thing. And I showed them by example. I had a copy of the demo of Let's Dance that David Bowie's family had given to me. And they said, Nile, is this important? I went, wow, you have the worksheet? You have I couldn't believe it. Like, to them, it was just like a little piece of yellow paper. To me, it was like, I cannot believe you actually have the worksheet that confirms what I had been telling people since we put out the record. But now here's the proof. And then they had a thumb drive of the day that I did the Let's Dance arrangement. I had no idea that I did that whole album in 2 days, all the ideas, and wrote the arrangements. And that was the demo that we brought back to New York and made the record in 17 days.
Just finally, we do this interview through the prism of ways to change the world. If we put you in charge, if you were able to change the world overnight again, how would you do it?
I love these kind of wacky hypothetical questions. Do I have multiple choices?
You can have what you want.
Can't just be one thing because there's so many things that I see that I feel are wrong. If you disagree with a person for whatever reason, I don't think there's anybody that you can't talk to and they can see your side and you can see their side. And you may disagree, but I just don't believe in that. I think anybody can be talked to. As a black person living in America, believe me, I've talked my way out of getting killed many times, just by trying to be logical and help people see something. And, you know, and I have to say it's sometimes really outsmarting them. I would think that if people were kinder and communicated with each other and felt that we really were, that we all basically want the same thing. We really do. It's not that complicated. In science, we have a term called relaxed joyfulness. And that term means that every animate life form is seeking relaxed joyfulness. That's the natural state of an animate life form. And the theory of the 3 brains are that you seek relaxed joyfulness. The secondary state is that you are unsure. Like, so the way they picture it is they say, okay, imagine a deer at a watering hole. So if the deer is in a state of relaxed joyfulness, he's just there drinking the water and everything is fine. The second state is not sure, looks around and sees if there's any predators, but he's not running, drinking, but, you know, just making sure things are safe. The third is fight or flight. That's it. There's only those three states. There's nothing else you can do. Either you relax joyfulness, you're indecisive, or you fight or flight. And I would like it to be relaxed joyfulness all the time. I think that if that's what animate life forms naturally pursue, why shouldn't that be the way things are? Now, I know that's impossible because some things eat other things, and you're always going to be worried about, is the thing next to me going to eat me? But if our planet could go back to the way that it feels like it will sustain itself forever, and we don't do things to destroy it, I'd be, I think that would be a great thing. You know, I talked to friends of mine from the scientific community, and they think that our future looks fairly grim and bleak. And these are very, very smart people, smartest people I know. And I just asked them point blank, you know, how many years do we have? They say maybe 300 tops. And I think that's a horrible answer. I don't want to hear an answer like that. You know, humans are smart. Why can't we figure out how to get along? I don't expect everybody to like my guitar playing. Sometimes I barely like it. But I think that we all can understand. We all can see other people's points of view. And that's what seems very odd to me, the fact that we're so dug in, like we don't want to see the other side. And I don't understand where that's coming from. Why does a person not, like I'm not asking you to become Russian Orthodox, and just recognize that it exists.
Nile Rodgers, thank you very much indeed. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thanks for sharing your life story and your ways to change the world. I hope you enjoyed that. If you do, then please give us a rating and a review. You can watch all of these interviews on the Channel 4 News YouTube channel. Our producer is Sarah Goff. Until next time, bye-bye.